Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Kocek. I'm the founder and CEO of Chemical Q Device. Here for discussion 108. This is Thursday, November 9th, 2023, for QML/Kimmel, Technology for Medical Regulatory Agency Review. I basically have reviewed this so much, and I've seen other people have published, announcements and developments that I think it's time to kind of like go for it a little bit as far as regulatory. So basically, I'm calling it QML/Kimmel because QML is the term that most people are aware of. However, that's already a term that's used in classical, programming. And then Kimmel is more specific, quantum-inspired machine learning, but less people are aware of it. So I think it's good to call it, by two names for the time being, as it goes through these introductory phases. So as you can see here, the amount of classical bits it takes to run a notebook versus machine learning, there's going to be more. And then obviously when you're simulating qubits or quantum bits, you're going to take up more of that information over here, and that's displayed in the right. So for instance, 20 qubits at least, a megabit. But I think that's without many gates, that type of stuff. So quantum machine learning is defined as the integration of quantum algorithms within machine learning programs, meaning that fully functional pre-existing machine learning programs now adding quantum algorithms. Quantum-inspired machine learning, or QML, is a practical form of QML processed by GPUs, CPUs, or even TPUs you can use as well for these as so basically I did the format in the pitch deck. So basically the first one is the problem is that our understanding of classical bits goes way back to 1947 in Bell Labs. It's this most basic unit of information in computing. Deep learning is basically, everything boils down to is it on or off, in individual bits, but it's not taking advantage of any types of special quantum physics. The architectures, say, between a convolutional neural network and a transformer model, these are different in deep learning. But again, where convolutional neural network might use a window to slide over, as a mechanism, transformers uses attention. So basically, it's looking at it from a quantum physics point of view with quantum machine learning. And, all of this has got tracked by basically the number of parameters, or how much more in-depth these problems have become, more complicated data sets leading up to the ChatGPTs, OpenAIs in specific. And there's dropout and weight decay that have been used to help, with issues such as overfitting. But again, as far as we know, no quantum mechanics like a Qiskit or Penny Lane has been used extensively for medical, being approved. So this next part is basically there's issues still remaining. So Transformers was supposed to take over convolutional neural nets in NIH, FDA, in both safety and efficacy. I've recently found a paper, stating that CNNs, or convolutional neural nets, are still kind of competitive with transformers, right? It's just finding out a better way to run them, which is CNNs are the older versions, FDA approvals, those types of things. And then, so will we continue to see parameter boosts to process larger data sets? Will that trend continue? And then, will natural language processing start to implement quantum-inspired machine learning as well? So this is, some of the main points that I've defined as the problem. Now, the solution with this is basically these QML workflows. So again, I refer to it as QML/Kimmel. Because it kind of covers everything, and it doesn't leave people kind of wondering what the technology is. And then, so for instance, bits behaving according to quantum mechanics to make qubits, and it takes a lot. It's going to take more RAM to do things, but if you're familiar with deep learning, machine learning, with the number of parameters that we've far surpassed millions into billions, and now we're at like trillions. And it's thought with the quantum bits not having to go nearly as many parameters, just because there's a lot more information in a simulated qubit there. And some bits are for the notebook, and other bits are for machine learning. And there's actually a really good Penny Lane model from 2019 that a lot of people still use. It's called quantum transfer learning, that you have parameters that you can freeze, for the classical neural network, like a ResNet. And then for the quantum is actually, you can have those train So it's now you're seeing the impact of the quantumness compared to the impact of like 11 million classical parameters. And that's what this will all boil down to, is basically how far will all this take, like the quantum physics and these types of things, bits further, and in which applications. So basically, I've defined this, so current generation of hybrid algorithms, and you can actually, people get confused about quantum inspired machine learning, I would say, and even in QML, if you know, say over 5 years from now, if you could run it with hardware, I mean like QPUs or quantum computers. So very likely all of this will be relegated to, you know, GPUs, CPUs, readily available hardware, you know, runs well, those types of things. And you can actually, a quantum algorithm, you know, with qubits is not that much different than a classical algorithm. And you don't actually need to have, in smaller cases, you don't need to have separate, you know, GPU simulator here, CPU simulator here, that type of stuff, because you can actually run it all on the same device, but you're going to be limited in how much RAM you could use. So that's where typically, you know, people choose to use simulators, okay? But the actual linear algebra and what you could do, you can do on a laptop with PennyLane with both quantum and classical, you know, components, you know, on classical hardware. And there's benefits to it too. It's basically, it fits in very well with machine learning workflows. I'll show you another kind of a figure with that. As far as getting the exact values, not having to wait for many shots, and then also having pure states, these pure quantum states that we won't have for quantum computers likely for many, many years. Now, there's there's analogs, you know, between classical and quantum. So in the quantum circuit, it's the linear component, measurement is nonlinear. And then also quantum algorithm concerns similar to classical, you still have to, it's the same type of thing. If there's bias in data sets, if there's data drift going on, if there's a need for retraining, which by the way, FDA in these days allows for. And then where we are now, we're looking at 30 qubit workflows. You can probably go higher if you cut circuits. So if you have like 60, I haven't pinpointed the total amounts, but basically the specific applications for QML/Kimmel are going to be, you know, different than what people think of, like thousands of qubits with quantum computers. But keep in mind, there's no quantum noise. There's different ways of separating data sets that you could still very likely take advantage of the quantum physics in these. So also, you know, and keep in mind, FDA is likely just getting wind of this. You know, I've done 4 or 5 big talks, and this one kind of addresses it as a more comprehensive look at the technology. So this is what I'm putting as the solution. So the market opportunity is basically this. Global machine learning market, they're saying will go from 17 billion to 90 billion from 2021, which is passed, to 2026. So these are huge numbers. Now, the compound annual growth rate for that would be about 39%. And they say in a separate report, quantum machine learning, about 30% compound annual growth rate from this year through the end of the decade, being worth $5 billion, you know, at the end of the decade. And, you know, these are the drivers of the industry. You know, people don't just go for, you know, approvals. There's other motivating factors behind, you know, getting a success, you know, getting an FDA AI device in the market. Now, healthcare data accounts for 30% of world's data volume, and then compound annual growth rate 36% through 2025. So AI in healthcare market to reach $428 billion by 2032, with a growth of 44% compound annual growth rate over the forecast of this year through that 2032. And so you're starting to see this. So this is AI in healthcare we're talking about, and then global AI medical imaging, which is a huge component in FDA approvals for radiology, as you know, compound annual growth rate 45% through 2027. And I think, you know, if the performance keeps getting better with QML/Kimmel, as we'll start to see radiomics, you know, hopefully, you know, pick up some of the development too, with a little bit lower compound annual growth rate, but it's just, you know, it's basically advanced AI and better ways of helping out radiologists. So for this next part, so I've been collecting these. This is basically everything in industry that's been going on the past year. So the first one is NVIDIA, 4,000 V100 GPUs and close to 1,000 A100 GPUs. You can see 1,200 plus compute nodes. Most of us run one, or we might run a couple nodes, multi-GPU for quantum state vector testing of a range of quantum algorithms. Now, what's significant about this is you don't always have to, so say if the A100, which is a top CPU, is on Colab for me is it's still cheap. It's like $1.30 an hour, but the V100 is 50 cents. So that's over twice as cheap. And then the performance is like 20% less, for the V100. So anyways, you could see why they use so many of these V100s in this case. And a lot of times the A100, unless speed is the very only thing that you care about, nothing to do with finances, you can oftentimes use the V100s. Now, the second case here with NVIDIA and QCware, they say quantum-inspired software platform accelerates large molecule simulation speed. So there's, in all these, it's kind of shining through. There's certain things taking advantage of quantum physics as opposed to just a traditional CNN or a traditional, transformer model with just classical bits without, implementing any quantum mechanics whatsoever. And they say NVIDIA GPUs using these GPUs to figure out a big step change in performance. And this was April of this year. Now you see another one here. So this is probably the one you'll see most in the headlines. So NVIDIA GPUs, NERSC, which is associated with the Perlmutter supercomputer. PennyLane is the pretty much in a lot of these the default quantum computing language for a variety of reasons, and Brookhaven National Lab. And they're basically scaling up both GPUs and supercomputers. And the phrase they use is accelerating massive simulations of quantum systems throughout the rest of this year. And I think the number of GPUs was in the hundreds, something like 256 for that particular one. Now, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see, so the Wall Street Journal and Sandbox AQ, and it's good to see this. This is more like general news as opposed to like, the PennyLane, the other ones where people get lost right away if you weren't technical. So GPUs, this basically the headline paraphrase, GPUs have transformed AI, and now GPUs are here for quantum. Sandbox AQ is using GPUs for quantum equations, quantum software on GPUs. So like I said, this is pretty much the only option because I'll show you in an upcoming slide the amount of quantum noise there is with hardware and several other factors that this, as long as this this performance keeps getting better, this is appears to be the way to go. Now, Sandbox AQ is also in touch with like biotech firms and UC San Francisco, cutting edge physics based accuracy using massively parallel classical hardware. And it's synonymous with like, multi-node GPUs, very likely, or TPUs. Actually, I think in this one, they do mention TPUs. And, obviously for cancer, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Now, this next one is, this is actually, I found in a Tom's Hardware article. Tom's Hardware actually said that GPUs, a single GPU, will outpace quantum computers for some time. Now, this ACM paper was kind of like the nuts and bolts, and this is kind of like a monthly update. And it's good. They said a single A100 to match that GPU in performance would take decades worth of, like an upcoming QPU that would have 10,000 error corrected logical qubits. And, we're basically still in the physical. So it's QML workflows and stuff like that. Like you're likely talking bigger problems with small data with quantum computers, but nothing like QML workflows. And that's what this number 2 says right there. And then most recently, these 2 BARD reports. So they say QML has the potential to revolutionize many industries. QML can account for the complex interactions between genes. And then you'll see this other BARD, this one right here. QML algorithms can be used to simulate embedded systems with quantum mechanics. And this could be useful for developing more efficient and reliable embedded systems. Okay, so this is kind of, getting even more specific. So these are all Kimmel related studies. So this, the first 3 are basically COVID-19. And you'll see a lot of these, and same thing with mine. A lot of us can get about similar, or if not a little bit better than classical. So the next step is maybe leaving this gate model architecture that we're in and going more into something that's quantum simulators can really take advantage of without yet having to even run it on, without being concerned about having to run it on quantum hardware. But you see some of the gains are pretty good. So 2.9% over a deep learning neural net. You know, the accuracies, it just depends on what they were doing. I wouldn't say, you know, a lot of these are binary. One of them's 4-class, and I'll get to that one. But the next one you see here, and some of these actually, so BMC is a big journal. So that's Springer Nature, Archive, and Bio are XIV. Those are more repository, like you don't need peer reviewed for that. Now the IEEE with this rheumatoid arthritis and a colleague of mine, Zoran Krunik, this is 2022, and they did both hardware and they did both simulators, and they, you know, they did their best to say basically, you know, anything could have potential, but it's really at this point the simulators that are pulling the load if you want any kind of graph or table to look nice. And so you see those three for osteoarthritis, you know, basically accuracy and you know, small improvements. And for a lot of this is going through the motions, but the algorithms, the core algorithm architecture with this was designed in 2005. And, you know, I've studied this and presented on it before. And basically it's meant to be backwards compatible with quantum hardware. And anyways, it has other flaws too. So that's the thing I think a lot of us would be looking forward to, is switching to more robust simulator specific algorithms, you know, that don't have any quantum noise. And then so these three, Alzheimer's, I studied a lot. And then, you know, so basically they, you know, for some of them plus 5.9% over convolutional neural net. And it's tricky because a lot of times if you have a classical notebook versus a quantum notebook, are all the hyperparameters the same? Sometimes, you know, there's different types that are available on classical versus quantum. And it's really like the core algorithm, is it separating data across this simulated qubit in a good way that we can measure. And, you know, basically for the rest of these here, 4-class brain tumor, and then, you know, you see the TEC-RV for brain or liver tumor. And the Dong Wai et al., and actually there was another, they have 2 papers here. I think it's the same group of researchers. You know, this is a pretty good result, so close to 98%. And, you know, you could follow, and I think the big thing is, like, you know, with all the research that I've done for the startup, all of these notebooks listed here are online. They're on GitHub. And then, so basically it starts with the report typically, and it'll go to like the main GitHub with the other code. And then all the last ones will be that specific notebook to download. And for these, I basically just kept scaling up, you know, from 2 classes to close to 800 images, 4 classes, 1,500, 10 class, 3,500, to 44 class, 4,400. And, you know, this model is just very intriguing to use. Like I said, it's a quantum transfer learning model. And, you know, it's basically the first generations of these. And this is 2019, you know, so about 4 years ago. And you can change the classical deep learning neural network to say like a, you know, different types of ResNets. And I've had some luck with a vision transformer as well. So you can see some of the accuracies here. I was able to get, you know, 97.7, 99%, and this is 2 classes. And the issue that you have with all this is the available RAM. So if I'm running on a GPU, even a top of the line, I'm like 40 gigs. So when I get down to like the 44 class, and especially it's the number of images with the other classical deep learning network that's not being trained, it's, you know, it's an issue with time and then RAM, and it's not too expensive to do these types of experiments. But basically you can see what I did for 4 classes, got it up to 88%. And then with 10 classes, some of these, so when I say trainable, that means that just like deep learning, you know, so ResNet or, you know, AlexNet and these types of things, convolutional neural nets, very similar to that. Now it's the simulated qubits that get trained. So if you have, in this case, there's 4 times 8, there's 32 of these quantum parameters that can get optimized as far as the values. Okay, so say this one's 0.2, this one's 0.6, where each of these in this second block of, you know, burgundy colored gates are. So it's really quite fascinating, but there's also times where you can go pretty far with just the embedding, which means no training, but it's quantum effects. So it's separating data in a certain way. And then you can see these last three, with the 10 class. This was a good value here, this 85.8%, and I got over 11% better than without using the quantum circuit. And that one, I was trying hard for the classical model to do well as the quantum one too. But compared to the quantum algorithm, these 11 million or 30 million parameters that are, on classical, that's still having a greater effect than some of these other smaller quantum algorithms, which makes sense. But in theory, you still shouldn't need nearly as many parameters, quantum versus classical. And then these last two, basically, on this one, I compared it to other different types. So, training on a ResNet 18, first off, the accuracy for the quantum 64%, about 5% if I didn't have the quantum algorithm, but it like a fully trained, CNN or basically a transformer, that one was like about 20%. So they're in the 80s, compared to a smaller quantum algorithm like that. And then I did an efficiency study, so that's based on time, and then converting, my, however much it costs to run, per hour in Colab into cost and then into an efficiency. And the quantum transfer learning, is basically is about half as efficient as the transfer learning. This is for all 4,500 about images that you'll see there. And in this case, the notebooks go into it more, and that's that's as far as I could take it with this one. And then, so the business model is this. So basically, what is on the left here is explained in the previous slide as well, where you have some kind of pre-trained network that, say, for instance, was trained on like 1,000 different classes with millions of images, or like a ImageNet, something like that. And then you go to run whatever, and then now you have your quantum, your trainable part here, and then fixing the classical. Now PennyLane, who's listed right here, they want all-to-all differentiability. So meaning like you're getting benefit from the classical deep learning and you're getting benefit from the quantum. In this specific case, and most of them that I've run, I've had issues meeting those goals. So it's one of those things like, it'll work for maybe one notebook and some more, and they have like 27, 28 of them right now. But, the compatibility is trending to always be getting better as far as, trying to get peak accuracies with all of the devices available to you. So that's it. Basically, this is not requiring, some fancy hardware. We can get these things off the shelf. Like I said, like an A100, if I went to buy it, would be $7,000 for a single GPU. But if I go to rent it from Google Colab, it's like $1.30, like an hour. So it's really cheap. And readily available, these quantum simulators. And basically to build up to this multidisciplinary expertise to be leveraged through this, a term by FDA, a total product life cycle. So basically, this is the goal is for this to be established, technology understandable, and for it to get, you could still retrain on it even after you get approval. And then obviously with impact assessments as far as what could be affecting, financials for these things. And the PennyLane, so some of you, and especially, if people are watching this recorded, the PyTorch is like the leading machine learning framework that to work with PennyLane or Qiskit. So PennyLane has Torch Layer and Qiskit has Torch Connector. And this basically allows you to either put a quantum circuit right in the middle of a Torch Layer. Like if you opened up a notebook, you do some things on the quantum M to make it look right, and then you insert that code. And so with Qiskit, they have Torch Connector. Now PennyLane also has JAX compatibility. They have TensorFlow. TensorFlow I've had issues with, but just some notebooks are TensorFlow. But I would say just if you were to take all of these combined, it's typically the PyTorch that's most compatible with QML libraries. So this is a big slide because it's basically saying, you know, there's just so much that's just heard about quantum processors. And we know that we have limited availability, which is a huge issue because if you want to keep optimizing your runs and, you know, basically have, you know, computers that are available, that's an issue. The second thing is there's no error correction. There's partial error mitigation at this point. And the type of differentiation is called forward accumulation, which is not as good as the classical or the Kimmel. And it's actually the more and more parameters, it goes exponentially higher in runtime. And the outputs, like I said, you have to do shots, and you know, you don't get the exact values unless you run like hundreds of thousands of shots. It just depends on the applications. And also because of the quantum noise, there's density matrices, so you can't get, you know, the math is even worse. And then, so this all equates to no, you know, quantum machine learning workflows. And I don't think anybody's been able to prove anything else. So basically, I'm forecasting that to be at least 5 years because it would need to be readily available. It would have to be error corrected. It would have to be accurate, efficient QML workflows, significant engineering to fit in. Now, it could be part of it. I don't see it for medical because it's going to be a challenge to get QML / Kimmel in. But like, you know, say for other industries, if you have a big problem on the side that doesn't have a lot of data, you just need to run it once. It's not like a workflow. Then you're talking QPUs. And I just think a lot of more attention should be focused on the whole, you know, this has been available for 4 years with Kimmel / QML. We could, you know, easily run with CPUs and GPUs, readily available, no quantum error whatsoever, reverse accumulation, which if you've heard from classical backpropagation, we can do that. And you could also do one called adjoint differentiation, which includes the quantum circuit. The outputs, if we choose to, you can get the exact quantum answers right away so that, like, you know, like machine learning is constantly like running. So if you have like, say, like 10 epochs and the first epoch has like 10 mini batches, well, that needs to run the quantum algorithm 10 times, you know, so then that's 10 times 10. So that'd be 100 times evaluating the quantum algorithm, optimizing parameters, stuff like that. So it's just, it fits very well. And like I said, it's even farther away from most people thinking like quantum simulators are special. And, you know, it's basically those are dedicated devices for the quantum algorithms for QML / Kimmel. And, you know, you just don't need, or they basically have a lot more RAM typically, and then compute power than if I were to try to do classical and quantum algorithms on this computer with linear algebra with 16 gigs of RAM, and I have other stuff running, you know, that's an issue. So the other thing is pure quantum states. So again, it's basically, you know, if the quantum algorithm is trainable, which is, you know, most cases what we want, because that's machine learning, is that, you know, they're not density matrices and they're evaluated as they call it Ket notation. So it's just, it's a more convenient way of doing it. And then, so this, of course, is classical data generating, classical processing. And the big thing is it's classical bits plus quantum physics or quantum mechanics in these cases. Now, these are just two examples. So I've been talking about this first one a lot. So this is basically like I can do a Python notebook, PennyLane. PennyLane said you could do this. I mean, typically you do run a quantum simulator, but for proof of concept, if you had some simple system, you know, you can simulate both classical and quantum machine learning on a single device. So of course and this is how I appropriated it, like you're going to be lower in CPU processing, and then basically number of parameters are highly associated with the amount of RAM. So if you have low RAM, low parameters, you know, likely a low impact or, you know, medium impact of probable benefit over probable risk. Now on this right one, you actually might be able to do this in 2 devices. I've been asking around as far as I know for the GPUs, there's may be times where you want to do a single GPU for classical machine learning or deep learning, and then a separate GPU, you know, for quantum. And I haven't been able to calculate it I've been asking if it's just a single GPU, like when I select in Google Colab, and then it's doing both, the linear algebra with the classical and quantum algorithms on a single one. But anyways, when you're talking about multi-GPUs and you're more RAM, your probable benefit is likely going to go up. So when we talk about safety and efficacy, like for FDA, this is more talking about efficacy, but we're also not introducing quantum noise and some other issues that would have problems with these workflows. So safety appears to be less of a concern at this point. It's more like how much better will these workflows be compared to just like state of the art machine learning and deep learning as well. And basically that's it. So how much quantum physics helps bits process big data sets. Now you could track this process with academic papers. Maria Schuld, Seth Lloyd, Kristen Temme, they've all published these types of things. And say, for instance, it's like for a smaller data set, and say if you try to train like the embedding, basically the whole quantum circuit is being trained, then you might come across issues such as overfitting, those types of things. So it's basically waves. We get these waves of papers, but I think in specific, because of the functionality, and especially the only thing holding back QML/Kimmel is, awesome. If we can get awesome performance across several notebooks and we understand what's going on better, and as opposed to running, say like a specific quantum algorithm for a specific data set, maybe not as like, future proof. But what I did here is basically I did some benchmarkings. So like I said, on Colab, Google Colab, it's a rental service for Python notebooks. I ran the A100, which is the top of the line GPU, in 20 seconds, total model runtime. And this is graph embedding, 25 qubits. And it's a decent problem, but if you look at the model, it's not like, like top of the line, classical, but still, 20 seconds, pretty good. And that was 37 times better than their worst device. However, default.qubit tends to be the most compatible. So that's what's happening as well. As we'll ask on forums for more compatibility. We want to run Lightning Qubit, Lightning Cocos, Lightning.GPU on more of these notebooks. But anyways, so if you're stuck here, and I've been stuck with other models of running default.qubit, you could see the speed that, and this is a huge difference. Like if that's like, over 3, but for like 600 seconds, something like that, that's a huge deal. Which goes to also say the processing power of the GPUs for the quantum algorithms. Now, it's 16 times faster than this other Culex. It's an open source simulator. Qiskit Air, which wouldn't be, your first choice because you probably run PennyLane simulators. So this might actually be a little bit faster if everything else is PennyLane. And then 8 times faster than the Google Cirq.QSIM, 7 times faster than a traditional C++. It's a faster CPU-based simulator. And it's only 1 times faster than the V100. So this is what I'm saying. If the cost, for an A100 is like $1.30 an hour, and, just figure scaling those things up if you're doing multi-node or multi-GPU, and the cost for the V100 is 50 cents, so it's over twice as expensive to run an A100, but you're only getting 20% faster speeds, okay? But these are the types of things that exist. And if you don't do the studies, you could waste some money. And if you don't use your credits, you could be wasting money as well. And there's other options besides Colab. So this is basically the pitch. Is many people have said gate-based algorithms are issues, for quantum hardware, and it appears that there's also issues for simulators as well. So, like I said, this architecture was 2005, and then implemented about 2012, 2013, but it's meant to be like this broad universal solution as we're getting bigger and bigger with quantum. But in reality, if we have like really smart people with quantum physics and understand simulators, and more importantly understand data sets processing with simulators, we could probably take this a lot farther. Now, I put this on here. So this is basically radiomics workflow. And there's certain parts of this that can be adopted in theory by QML/Kimmel. Image acquisition is more like reconstruction algorithms. Image pre-processing is like, de-blurring, images. A child's moving on an MRI. Image segmentation, is basically segmentating layers, and that's been a huge area. Feature extraction, I see QML papers on feature extraction, feature selection, and then a predictive model would be, more like, this working classifying model. So, there's basically no restrictions in using QML. It's just I think the slide that rings the bell the most is all these like medical QML studies, and everybody keeps doing the same thing. Like we're all using the same quantum algorithm architecture, and it's not it's not taking us to the next levels. So obviously there will be some competition. So I put the first one as natural language processing, which is like large language models. D-Wave, which is they do physical quantum annealing. Now, keep in mind, simulated quantum annealing is probably good too because it doesn't have noise. IonQ actually has they have agreements with Dell to use emulated or simulated cases, also with using quantum computers. And then Rigetti just was in the news this past week or two, and they're getting into QML with their emulators too. So it's not going to be just me or just like the purely the simulator group. It's if their stuff is many years away, why not try to get the benefit now? So basically, purely classical deep learning developers continue innovation. So this is not going away. So when they say classical is still a lot bigger than quantum, now we can start to see like now we can put quantum in that classical category, but with quantum physics. But you're going to see bigger architectures. You're going to see more parameters for all of these. The chat GPTs are up in the trillions for classical parameters. And then, they're big. They have organizational excellence. They in their minds, they don't think that they need this Kimmel expertise. So that's another thing that other companies wanting to adopt that technology, you will have to find, people that understand trainable quantum parameters, basically. So quantum computers will likely solve large problems with small data, right? So there's a huge distinction between that and efficient, readily available, cheap QML/Kimmel workflows. So the industry has had multi-billion-dollar valuations for IonQ, these three. So they've all, been claimed to be worth multi-billion dollars. D-Wave has been taking, they've had practical applications because it's a specific thing towards their technology that others, not as many other companies use. But this will still likely attract attention. And if you watch the headlines, it's towards the quantum computers, except for if you saw the previous slides, with QCware, the National Lab, Google Bard, those types of things. But quantum noise and lack of efficient QML methods will likely prevail. And in other industries besides medical, because like I said, it'll be a hurdle to get something like Kimmel into FDA, like just discussion and other things too. In other industries, yes, I mean, you can have QML workflows and then say, for instance, have a quantum computer that feeds into it, but it's like, trying to slide all these other, this emerging hardware with, FDA and like, it wouldn't seem like a proper time, I don't think. So, like I said, they also utilize quantum simulators for clients. And like I said, Rigetti, IonQ. I'm not sure the level that D-Wave has. They're kind of known for physical quantum annealing in that specific case. So the ask for this is basically to go through these processes. Now, this is basically a combination of when digital like data, became big before AI. And it's also with some of these other AI kind of innovations that FDA has done. And by the way, you can train a quantum algorithm a lot of times after it got approved, right? So it's a total product life cycle kind of thing. So basically, they've had these things as far as software validation, and like I said, I don't anticipate it being as much of a safety thing, but more efficacy, because for anything, like the models that are run and other people do, you have to boil it down to like, why exactly was it more efficacious? If it's just a setting, like a hyperparameter setting that, the quantum is taking advantage and, classical could get there somehow, it's these routes are likely going to have to, be more further exposed basically. And, to get pre-market submissions, there's they have basically different frameworks, and a lot of the AI, like these continuously learning AI algorithms, they just had like over, let's see, it was 521 last year, and I think it was about 700 this year. So it keeps getting more, submissions for this. And basically, there's clinical decision support software, there's mobile medical apps, these types of things. And when will, like if you're doing inference, like say on an Apple Watch that's taking less data at that specific time point, as opposed to training a full model, which is going to take more of the multi-node, multi-GPU. So they've also done radiology workshops and then, anticipated intended use changes. So this is paperwork stuff. It's called SPS and ACP, and it's under GMLP or good machine learning practices. And basically, you kind of have to forecast ahead what the changes might be, and then how would you change it? And all of this stuff will likely apply if quantum, if QML goes much further, to this technology too. And then also they've done patient engagement advisory committee meetings. Pre-cert working Kimmel model would be huge. Substantially equivalent predicate device. What is that? Does it require de novo? Or can you use 510K? So 510K meaning that there's already a substantially equivalent predicate device on the market. So, these types of things, right? But I don't think, because they have natural language processing and these types of things coming through the pipeline. And obviously we'd be in the position as an industry to have quantum natural language processing as well. So using simulated. So the rest of this, and it also can get piloted. So say, for instance, like, we have the real world data, with quantum, machine learning, these simulated techniques, and then, to go through with that and algorithm robustness as well. So it's one of those things that's just like, I mean, to me, it seems like what will make the most sense, right? Because like, it might be a little bit harder to get a 510K if the previous device wasn't using PennyLane or Qiskit. And we'd use more RAM, but I don't think that'd be the main issue. And then I'd mentioned good machine learning practices. There's 10 of those, basically having transparency with that. And then also, providing users with clear essential information. Now, this is the last slide. So this is a thank you. So, this is overdue. And I think a lot of these things can be taken for granted, but PennyLane is owned by a company called Xanadu. They're in Toronto, and they specifically focus on quantum machine learning, or you could say quantum inspired. You can't run any of this on quantum computers. Now, those that are familiar with this discussion is I think 26 or 27 either changed their QML demos or improved them. So say, for instance, I was able to improve most of these. So these things, I think they're up to like 28, something like that now. But anyways, it's a phenomenal way to understand the technology and say quantum transfer learning, graph embedding, and especially like, the intricacies of Torch or TensorFlow, but, Torch is a little bit bigger. So you have Torch combined with your quantum circuit. And then I've tried putting that into other classical notebooks, and it should work, right? Because if the installs and the imports are right. But anyways, their forum, this discussion forum, it's the same people that write the demos as the same people as like that write big papers. So the access, and I wouldn't recommend saying hello, whoever, because that tends not to work well. But in general, you'll keep progressing if you read their papers and do their demos, that type of stuff. They also have a Slack's a little bit smaller, but you might find a niche on it. Now, the other one is Qiskit. So IBM Qiskit is the largest quantum computing platform that we have. They have free quantum computers. They have, it's like 12 of these machine learning tutorials available. They don't put quite the emphasis on it, it doesn't seem like, as opposed to the PennyLane ones. But their Slack channel is my largest Slack that I have. So Slack is basically you go on and then there's all these, groups or, things that you can click on and help people or other people help you. They also have they have tomorrow mornings. Actually, it's 9 a.m. Pacific or 12 p.m. or noon on Fridays. And so I try to join that. And I think other people in this room try to do that too. And like I said, the key with all of this is, classical has to let Kimmel in. And so far that's been happening. Not only just with NumPy is big for PennyLane and obviously with Python, but especially with PyTorch, because there's Hugging Face demos that I can get on and say, for instance, they're Hugging Face plus PyTorch, and the neural networks are written in PyTorch. So say, for instance, I can write up a certain algorithm for quantum, and then try importing it in between different layers using the available tools that PennyLane has. So anyways, yes, PyTorch has been very progressive. JAX is also available in TensorFlow, but that's the one that kind of sticks out. And also I want to thank medical quantum colleagues with these LinkedIn polls that I do. It helps me to create them. It helps to hear the feedback. So I should have the references up either tonight or tomorrow, but basically I'll put these up, and sometimes I'm kind of surprised by the responses. I think this one is, what would you like to see more quantum specific algorithms? And that's like a top one, and it's tied with one other one. And say, for instance, like cutting circuits with more qubits, that's not the popular answer. So it helps to make them, it helps to hear back. And I have seen a number of people, and we'll first start, and again, I should have the next slides for references later on today. Are there any questions regarding any of the specific slides? And you could feel free to put in the chat. You could also do the hand, you could also wave your hand, or you could unmute as well. So I think if anything, because it's hard for me, because I try to see if people are more medical, more quantum. And yes, there's a level of technicality understanding some of this with quantum, but that's just how it is. There's no way really around that. I mean, this slide, for instance, is like existing workflows for radiomics. And, you have to think in the back of your head, with quantum, like, well, we do feature extraction with quantum, there's quantum papers, and then, how could that potentially help in that specific case? And, I think the more that I research this, and you've seen the tables that I made, it's not as bad as you would think, as far as like simulators, you can get by with a single computer. And it's just up to your desire as far as how much RAM you need and how much compute power too. And feel free, so you could either, like I said, you can unmute or you could put in the chat as well. So I saw there's a couple questions in the chat there.
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great work as usual. What caught my attention was QML algorithms can be used to simulate embedded systems with quantum mechanics. Are you referring to a simulation of a quantum computer or a quantum math in the NVIDIA processors?
Yeah, so the two that I'm referring to is basically these two bards, and they're discussions or like blogs, but they both came out on the same day. As much as I can glean from it, because they could say, like, say for instance, having quantum inspired to help, future quantum computers, it did mention that. But these are the two links right here for BARD, and I didn't see too much more than that. It didn't really go into that extravagant of detail. So that I try to, with all of these, because like say for instance, when they say cutting edge physics based on massively parallel classical hardware, that's pretty clear that that's quantum inspired. Now,
Mhm.
the BARD, like I say, I didn't see anything in specific, and this would be a shock to the industry if it was some hardware technique, a quantum hardware technique to get to this point. So I believe they're both the quantum inspired, but like I said, I'll have the resources up. If you want, you could take a closer look at them too.
Okay, well that's helpful. I agree with your logic that it's probably quantum inspired. I see it as a great stepping stone from the sales and marketing side to give uh, the the money people comfort in that if we can do a simulation to show what can be done with quantum hardware, it's just a more comforting way to go. So I think you pointed out a very important aspect for this to move forward. So good eyes.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, in my opinion, because I've dealt with this, with feature mapping and kind of like separating data sets across qubits, and these are kind of like the more aimed towards accuracy and a lot less speed. So when you get into quantum hardware, it's D-log algorithm and these types of things. But yeah, I believe that there's a lot of applications for quantum inspired, even at lower qubits. They set it at 30, for quantum machine learning, like with multi-node, Penny Lane, NVIDIA, but they're just going to be different, right? I don't think you can compare, even if there were, error corrected hardware right now running at a certain qubits, but all of these other, because we can run in workflows as opposed to a single big problem, that the applications are just going to be different, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of what you can do with QML, workflows at 30, probably, you can go higher in qubits, but you kind of lose the machine learning because it's resource intensive. But
Well, I'd say that you can carve the path. You're the man to speak to.
yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, it takes a ton of research, and like I said, and I want to leave room because I think there's other people here that have questions. Yeah. And I'm looking for okay. Yeah. So, like I said, so Alex, I'll have both of these up, and it's going to take me a little bit for references on this one. But just do the research, right? And, if you don't have years and years, and I'm talking over 5 years, just look for the terms like practical, useful, readily available. According to many people, quantum machine learning should be the primary application for quantum computing. And if that's the case, and we already have effective ways of doing that, you know, that are the same, they just take more RAM, as other methods, then why not? So, were there any other questions? Go ahead, Ron.
Hey Kevin, how are the arms? Are you on the mend?
So yeah, this is also the sympathy session. I was switched into better arrangements here. So for those that don't know, I was small car accident, and now I have a real cast, which they couldn't put on at first, but like that one's different. That's like a Velcro. But yeah, I appreciate all the support, that type of stuff, and progressing through it all.
Happy to see that you're recovering. I wanted to respond to the quantum simulation thing. I've been finding that quantum simulation has become a phrase that gets spread all over the place, but there's actually many different definitions of it. Quantum simulation, like what you find at Penny Lane, is that they don't simulate a quantum computer. They simulate the quantum mathematics. They simulate the quantum state of a computer without it. They're not simulating the actual hardware bits. There's also quantum simulators that simulate quantum phenomena, like on Qiskit Nature. If you've run any of those tutorials, you can run quantum simulations to predict what will happen with, in chemistry and molecular reactions. You can go over there and pull out any number of items from their library, plug in your own Hamiltonians, and use either real quantum hardware or quantum algorithm simulator to solve those Hamiltonians. There's also people, and I know, Kevin, you've seen them at the Qiskit thing you were talking about on Friday mornings, where they're using simulations to predict noise profiles and different ways of doing error correction. So it's become one of those terms, it's ubiquitous, and it's like it's starting to get real muddy. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
gotta just make sure you know which particular flavor you're talking about.
Yeah. Because I mean, two key people. So obviously Richard Feynman, and I think that was more like in the 80s. And then he basically said this should work. And then I think it was actually Seth Lloyd in Science. I think he was the sole author. He basically says it does work. You can simulate, quantum physics, quantum computers in, classical hardware. So yeah, I mean, even simulators, because like when people hear that, they might think all these extra requirements and these types of things. But I mean, on Penny Light's website, they call them plugins, devices, those types of things. Like these are just the terms that are used. And yeah, it's basically it's processing the quantum algorithm, but like obviously my perspective is that I see pure quantum physics in a simulator. I don't see that in a computer because it has all the noise. So, if it gets the full effects of entanglement, interference, superpositioning, I believe it does, based on my studies that I found. It's just you're just consuming a ton of RAM, the classical RAM, when compared to a native quantum computer. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
yeah,
So
there's
there is a demonstration where they, like in the Qiskit Nature, where they simulate the finding of the minimum energy state of I think it's lithium hydroxide. I might probably have that wrong, but they demonstrate how running it on real hardware, real quantum hardware, allows them to solve it like 100 times faster than a classical machine, and that's
yeah.
even counting in the fact of all the prep you got to do to get a quantum algorithm to run on an actual quantum hardware. So
Yeah.
that's pretty impressive.
Well, I would say if it was sped up, like if everything stayed the same, but like all the quantum hardware sped up like at least 5 years to get some semblance of, QML workflows, then we might be talking. But like, it's just the noise, with quantum noise, when it was a paper, it was Zuron and Dr. Frederick. He used to work at IBM. And, I read it for like the nth time, like looking for specific figures. And that's basically what I found. Like all of the charts are from the simulators, even though they tried to do it, both on hardware and both on simulators and projecting into the future, that type of stuff. But I don't know. I just don't think it's anywhere close, really, like with anything quantum hardware. Because I mean, this slide in specific, readily available, full error correction, accurate and efficient QML workflows that aren't, probabilistic. That's a lot to overcome. And I think even the experts might say, a error corrected quantum computer on its own, maybe even over 5 years. And when I say this, I'm not ruling out all the other industries. I'm just saying for medical, this is making sense with Kimmel and QML because it's the one that appears to have the most check boxes marked. And obviously machine learning and, training quantum parameters and the, the forecast for that it seems pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I think that's where a lot of people, because I'll join the Qiskit one tomorrow, but I think it's probably more qubits or more error, that type of stuff. And that's the only case I can see if it's helping like QML workflows. but that would be in the future because the QML workflows need to go through first, to get people's NIH funding or FDA approvals, and any of the other stuff, years, because it's a newer technology. There's still noise and that type of stuff. But I hope I'm coming off clear as that, because I see a lot of applications for quantum hardware, but I don't see it for efficient, quantum-based machine learning workflows, like getting by with the D-wave noise, with quantum annealing, and ion trap is a promising technology too with IonQ and Quantinium. But just for those are big problems with small data, not like trying to not artificial intelligence. And, I'm interested what other people have to say too. And Ron, if you have anything else, that's fine. And I'm just trying to see where we're at here.
Don't tease me, Kevin. I can talk forever. So.
And I would just encourage more quantum groups too. It seemed like there was more kind of when I got started, but then I went super technical and doing all my notebooks and that kind of stuff. But if you don't have anything to prove, as all as you have is facts, and I'm not saying anybody, but like if the only thing, like for me, I just memorize NSF facts and Fermi lab facts about quantum and these types of things, they just an expert on its own is not good. But if you have all of the data that's easy for other people to get to, and they just say like it'd be harder to get it other places, then I think you start talking about being in that building phase.
Yeah, I have no problem believing that QML is going to have its best performance these days with the big simulators, quantum algorithm simulators that are out there that can simulate large state machines. Just because. But again, there's more bigger machines coming online, and so it's hard to really predict how much longer it's going to be. I mean, there are at least 2 machines I know of that are either online or coming online that are going to blow. They're going to have circuit width that's going to blow the simulators out of the water. There's no way they can compete with that. They still suffer from noise. That's true. Some of these newer machines have way lower noise profile than like what the IBM guys do. So they have better circuit depth, but the circuit width is going to open things up. You may see bigger and better QML things coming out of that.
Yeah, I think.
But that right now those big machines aren't affordable. They're out there. You can access them. When I found out what one guy was paying to run one, I was like, well, I'm going to have to wait. I'm not going to get my hands on one.
Yeah. I mean, you can't discount availability at all. And, it's just, I think for most of these, it's a well-known fact, like typically you add qubits and you're going exponentially larger in RAM and time. And then if you add more depth, which is going left to right, like kind of like deep learning neural nets do, that's usually the better case. So yeah, it's just like with it'll be like the specific applications. So like I say, I think that's like feature mapping. It's like say if you have like 10 classes of data, you could do this with all the quantum effects and know to a higher degree of which class is at what part of the simulated qubit, as opposed to like just standard bits. And then the standard bits are either like stuck inside of a ResNet convolutional neural network, or they're stuck inside of like it doesn't seem like there isn't as much information, so anyways, we've had waves of studies with that up to training the embedding. And like I said, they had a demo up, and then it trended to have overfitting, but then it seems like we could fix it with dropout or freezing layers that you can do with classical deep learning too. But yeah, I think that, it's the specific applications. And, I think most people will be happy, a specific application for quantum hardware, specific, quantum machine learning for, medical, other fields too, for sure. And this isn't, when I say medical, I'm like, I just see enough of those boxes checked, like that, yes, that it has that opportunity to, stick, in a highly regulated field, you know, and if that's going to be the case, then, we know of Boson QSci and other startups too that use it for computational fluid dynamics with, supercomputers, quantum inspired too. So, but I wanted to get, yeah, go
I
ahead,
think it would
Ron.
be a good exercise though, because I know that you know a lot about the parameter driven QML stuff where the circuit is basically every time you run it, every time you run it, you're plugging in the parameters for the rotation gates. I've noticed that those things aren't necessarily deep as far as how, the circuit depth doesn't seem too deep. And the gates are simple. It's just rotations and
Hey,
C-naught gates, right?
yeah, it'd be
So
interesting.
I'm wondering if you could try to like, let's get that out to, 64 qubits and then see if we can run it on the IBM Eagle, which is 127 qubit, and you can access that for free now. So I'm wondering if that's something would be worth trying.
Yeah, I mean, all of these things sound great, but like my mind right now is just solely focused on QML and QML workflows. And
Yeah.
yes, I mean, if the hardware didn't have nearly as much noise, I'd say these are worthwhile experiments. But there's reason why, why they went from like a 5 or 7 qubit, I think it was on a 7 qubit Nairobi, which they deprecated, all the way up to a 127. You still have all the noise, right? But
Well, it again, it depends on your circuit depth and what you're doing.
yeah.
If you throw something at that Eagle that's just too deep, you're going to get nothing but nonsense back. I know this because I've done it.
Yeah.
But
And I,
if you can get a wide circuit in there that's within the certain thing, the noise is somewhat manageable. The least, the everything you could do to lessen the circuit depth brings that noise profile down.
yeah, I'm sure
And that's
it's,
why I talk about the parameter stuff, because those to me don't seem like they're that deep. They're that.
well, I would say if I were to put a number on it, so say for instance, like this quantum transfer learning, which is by far the most interesting of the quantum machine learning demos that I found, because it has both a classical, deep learning and quantum algorithm. And then you should be able to, they say in theory, run both of them and train both classical deep learning and quantum. But anyways, say for instance, the stock is 11 million parameters, classical bits. And then how does that correlate to say like, if it's 2 classes, so that you would use 4 qubits in that case, and then how would that correlate into the number of equivalent quantum parameters? I think it's significantly less. Like if it's 2 to the n, so if you have like a single qubit, that's 2 to the 1, which is just 2. So 2 classical bits are required for a single qubit. But if you have 2 to the 2, so 2 qubits, that's 4. So 4 classical bits, and then it goes 8 and those types of things. So yeah, that's basically where it's at, because 2 to the 4, 2 times 2 is 4, times 8, that's 16, right? And anyways, it seems like, it for sure takes a lot of RAM, in time. But I got up to 20 qubits with an embedding circuit, no trainable quantum, and I could run it, but it's like maxing out the,
Sure.
it's
The
like
simulator.
15 gigs GPU, something like that. But anyways, it's probably out there as far as people saying like, and it's probably actually in that calculation, right? But when you start adding gates, more gates, like wider, I'm sorry, deeper, that, that's when, these
Yeah.
equivalents don't match up. But I don't really want to run on hardware. Like if it's, it's not going to get me too far, because then what am I trying to do? Like project into some, QML workflow, but it's the same kind of issues that we have with simulators. Is if you're saying, not going that deep, it's the same thing we have without getting multi-node. And, say for instance, a 16 gigs to 40 gigs for an A100, and then, on and on, right? but I don't know. I like getting good data, and I don't see. I see quantum with big problems and small data and those types of applications, but I don't see it anywhere like close to QML workflows.
Yeah,
Well, like these quantum
again,
algorithms.
you're not going to be able to insert a quantum step into a classical machine
Yeah.
learning
Now,
stack, but you can use the same cyclic process just to solve other problems, or you use the quantum at the beginning at the beginning of the batch.
right.
But I mean, you're absolutely right. You can't go deeper because deeper's going to cause you problems.
Yeah.
But if you could try, I know when you were first doing it, you were doing those RY networks. They were only about eight gates deep. But what if we could just, instead of sticking with whatever you had, like 8 qubits, make it wider, make those parameters, make the parameter driven stuff a wider circuit, and keep the same circuit depth, and just see
Yeah.
whether that's something that the
Yeah.
hardware will deal with.
I
I don't
guess
know.
moving forward, I don't really see a discussion much with quantum hardware and medical. Like I don't at all, because it'll be convincing people of using quantum physics for classical
Yeah,
bits to begin with, and then it's talking about other technology that's like has noise, can't differentiate, like might do this, maybe do this. It's not available. It's too expensive. So
yeah,
I really don't see that, because that's what I'm focused on is the medical aspect with it.
yeah.
So
Especially for diagnostic stuff, I agree with you on it. But I mean, there's people out there using quantum for drug discovery and all kinds of medical adjacent stuff. But yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle to get a quantum based diagnostic tool
yeah,
approved.
because it's like 2 steps away, and then it's like,
Yeah,
because this would be one, and then just to even familiarize people with quantum mechanics, and then that's two, and then there's uncertainty there too. Um, I as well love talking about quantum. Now, anybody else that we haven't heard from? Any other questions or comments? And I bet you that's what some of the startups do is they just literally just talk about quantum until they figure the answer, um, unless it's like something like quantum error. But, like with Kimmel workflows, it could go towards like, we need it like, for working in medical, but they might want it to, move back into hardware. And it's just like, well, that's, even if we can get advantage now. So, yeah, I appreciate everybody come on. Any other last questions or comments here? See some other people returning, which is good. And then if not, this has been discussion 108. This is Thursday, November 9th, 2023. And this is the term. So QML/Kimmel. So I explained it in the beginning. So basically QML is a term used in classical processing. So I don't think that's a good thing. However, Kimmel describes QML, and just like the classical one that uses 2 terms, it might be best to call it QML/Kimmel. But yeah, this is basically the technology for medical regulatory agency review, and enough has been published by others, myself. I think it's built up that others can, start to understand the technology, like for applications in medical. So, but yeah, I appreciate everybody coming on. Have a good rest of the night and have a productive rest of the week. Take care, everybody. Appreciate it.